Hey guys, it's Divest. Today I wanted to talk about the perception of weapons used during World War II versus the objective reality of what was actually used. So first off is the C-96. When the Nazis were actually rearming, they contracted Mauser to produce the Luger, which ended 96 production entirely. Before that, the C-96 was produced for sale to the Chinese. After that, you had clones manufactured in Spain and pistols that hadn't been shipped to China that were bought up and used to arm rear echelons or for private purchase by officers. They were all chambered for 30 caliber Mauser pistol instead of 9mm because that is what the Chinese preferred too. All in, all it was about 2,000 select fire and 20,000 semi-auto only models no one cares about, which were mostly issued to the Luftwaffe to free up more Lugers and Walthers for the army. Where in video games it's usually depicted as a sidearm that Nazi soldiers carried when they wanted to have full auto in their pocket. Or it's just a high rate of fire submachine gun comparable to Allied models. Examples of more authentic alternatives would be a bunch of captured guns. The MP383 with 20,000 models before Operation Barbarossa. This is more comparable to a Thompson submachine gun in cyclic rate than a 96, though. There's also the Degyaryov machine pistol family with 80,000, millions of Spagan machine pistols, and to a lesser extent, the Finnish Model 31 and the French Model 38, with about 3,000 and 5,000 each. Speaking of Nazi subguns individually, they had more Spagan, Sten, and Berettas than MP40s. Much less the other Nazi machine pistol models like the 28, 35, or 41 that you'll see in video games. Those were all similar to the C-96 in that they were simple export designs which were eliminated to simplify production during the war, except for the 41 which made it old stocks to MP40 receivers. Next, let's talk about automatic rifles. We're all aware of the G43, you might even know about the G41 too. But the most common automatic rifle in Nazi service was actually the Tokarev family of rifles with over 3 times as many in service compared to the 500,000 of the domestic German models combined. This is because the Soviet Union had been attempting to standardize on an automatic rifle before the war, and almost all of their military equipment got captured by the Nazis during Barbarossa, including their pre-war stocks of 1.4 million or so rifles. As a secondary point after Barbarossa, the Soviet Union switched to producing the remaining 500,000 Tokarev rifles with a fire selector as the AVT. This means that when the Soviets used a Tokarev without a fire selector during the war, it was mostly recaptured from the Axis. The next Nazi gun I wanted to talk about was the FG-42. This is usually used as an automatic rifle serving as a counterpart to the Bren gun or the bar in games, but it was also very rare like the C-96 machine pistol, with only a few thousand produced. Additionally, they were typically issued to be used as rifles, not as machine guns because they were shit in sustained fire. Instead, they'd be used like other semi-auto rifles, loading clips into a detachable magazine like a Lee Enfield. A more authentic automatic rifle option for the Nazis would of course be a bunch of captured weapons. In this case, clones of the guns the Brits and Americans were using. Conveniently, the Czechs had 60,000 Model 26 machine guns that served as the basis for the Bren gun in stock, with more being taken from Yugoslavia and Romania, along with 26,000 Polish bars. Both of these weapons were in 8mm Spitz too, so they didn't mess with Nazi logistics. There were also 15,000 Steyr Model 30s, which used 30-round magazines like the Bren and the MG-13, the preceding machine gun design used by the Wehrmacht before the 34. Another big one was the French Model 24 machine gun, which was their biggest magazine-fed machine gun with almost 200,000, but this wasn't chambered in Spitz. Now let's go over to Asia for a little bit. You probably already knew that the Japanese didn't have a lot of submachine guns with them numbering in the thousands instead of the millions like the other major combatants of the Second World War. But what you may not have known is that the Type 100 wasn't the most common. The Japanese and Chinese both imported SIG Model 20 and Steyr MP-34 submachine guns in 30 caliber Mauser. Then the Japanese also captured large numbers of the select fire C-96 from China. The Type 100 is more popular in the media because it's a domestic Japanese version of the SIG. At the same time, this is also kind of accurate since the Type 100 was used in the Pacific, where the Japanese used their imported and captured submachine guns in Asia, and no one talks about World War II in Asia. Also, the Chinese and Japanese didn't use the MP-18 or the 28. Those were exclusively used domestically in Germany. The 18 refers to the Luger drum magazine version, and the 28 utilized the double-stack single-feed box magazine invented by Hugo Schmeisser. The SIG, Steyr, and Nambu submachine guns all use double-stack, double-feed magazines. This is a short tangent unrelated to the topic at hand, but magazine-loaded firearms almost all use technology from Germans. Mauser patented the double-stack, double-feed box magazine, and Schmeisser patented the double-stack single-feed. James Paris Lee invented the box magazine originally, but only in the single-stack, single-feed configuration. So the Mosin Nagant used a Lee-style magazine while the Lee Enfield used a Mauser-style magazine, despite being named after James Paris Lee, sort of like how the Kalashnikov kept on reverse engineering technology from Armalite to improve their design. Now to the final third of the planet with the United States. First off, let's talk about American bolt-action rifles. These were pretty common, especially in '42. The 1903 Springfield was still in use due to a lack of M1 Garands, and later because of the lack of a rifle grenade launcher or sniper variant for the Garand. In American service, the Springfield variants would be distinguished by their use of different-shaped grips on the stock. The other two bolt-action rifles in American service were the Springfield A3, which was produced as a substandard rifle with an aperture sight starting in '42. These were utilized by American auxiliaries as a standard service weapon. Unlike in Steel Division where the French used the Garand, in real life they used the Springfield. Other armies like the Chinese, Brazilians, and Dutch similarly used the Springfield and also the 1917 Enfield. The Garand sniper rifles were also largely unavailable and unsatisfactory during the Second World War. In terms of revolvers, obviously the 1911 was the primary handgun, but I see the .45 caliber 1917 revolvers from World War I as a common sidearm as an alternative to that, when in reality, the Smith & Wesson .38 was the most common revolver in American service at the time, with a few 1917s being issued to rear echelons to free up the 1911 for the front. Something else to keep in mind with all nations in the Second World War is that unless someone was actually issued a pistol, they wouldn't really have a pistol unless they had captured something. This is why Lugers were so popular, because a rifleman didn't have his own pistol issued to him, and he could carry one with him without any trouble, and even use it as a backup. For instance, there's a scene in Band of Brothers where Donald Hubler looted a Luger off a Nazi officer, and then later in the same episode, it misfires and strikes an artery, causing him to bleed to death. But while the circumstances were the same, the weapon was different. In reality, Hubler was carrying a FN Browning model 1922 that they had looted. The Luger has safety features that prevent it from misfiring like it did. I bring this up to remind everyone that I got downvoted for pointing this fact out on a Reddit post where people were using Hubler's death to shit-talk the Luger. Thanks for listening. Let me know if you learned anything from the video or if you want to argue with me in the comment section below. Until then, this is Divest the A10 signing out.